Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2, and recently I've had a lot of people asking me to set up an assault rifle PvP build, and while I don't think that assault rifles are particularly going to be the best gun in PvP, I think that LMGs and SMGs are going to be just overall more viable and probably net you more damage in total. I still think that they can still be a great option if used effectively. You can still do very well with them, and that doesn't mean at all that you can't use them, of course. And yeah, that was my main goal with this build, is just try to make an AR very good. I know that at the moment on the ropes and compensated builds are very popular, namely like, going 377. And while I do think that they are very strong, I wanted to try something different with this build than what, everybody else on the planet is already doing. But yeah, like always, if anybody else needs help farming, setting up the perfect build, maybe getting blueprints or materials, leveling up a new character, or anything like that, feel free to email me at nick2biz@gmail.com and I would love to help you out. I've also been streaming on Twitch every single day recently and love answering your guys' questions, so I'd really appreciate it if you check me out at twitch.tv/nick2. I've pretty much just been farming and setting up builds there, so it'd be great to see more of you guys around. But anyways, let's get right into the build. Alright, so just like with every other build video, you're going to start off with the specialization. Anytime I'm using an AR, I'm always running sharpshooter. Reason being is I think the headshot damage is extremely valuable, just a lot of damage overall. And I really like the reload speed, especially with the fact that we only have 40 bullets in the magazine now. I think this is especially important in conflict, because a lot of the time, maybe that person has an immune joint or something and you aren't quite able to kill them in one mag, so you have to reload mid-combat. Having a longer reload is really detrimental and can sometimes get you killed pretty easily, so having this is a huge help. And obviously, if you're having problems with recoil or something like that, this ability is pretty nice. You can run survivalist, I suppose, if you prefer to have the 15% flat damage, but I honestly just think that the headshot damage and the reload speed is huge, and even if there wasn't a large headshot damage number, I still think the reload speed is a godsend to have. But so getting into the build itself, I think this is an unconventional way of doing this, so don't freak out before you think that the build is absolute dog shit. I'll go into every single piece, but I guess I should go over the main point of this build. I didn't want to use what everybody else was using, like on the ropes, compensated, etc. I know that that build is good, and I'll probably make one of those in the future. I just wanted to try something else out. I didn't want to just, copy paste, re-upload what everybody else was already doing. So I wanted to make a glass cannon build with an AR that was functional and see how much damage I could possibly do. In order to do this, I figured that I would use two-piece Patriot. You might think, oh, this is really stupid, this isn't working, and you're losing the talent. So the thing about two-piece Patriot is that the damage to armor doesn't work in a PvE context. It doesn't work against NPCs, but it actually does work in PvP, and it's multiplicative on top of everything else. So it actually correlates to just a 10% flat damage buff against people that have, or against armor. And when they don't have armor, you're getting the huge health damage buff as well from your P4. And I'll go over why this talent is scuffed in a minute here. But yeah, and one of the reasons that you might think that going for a true Patriot isn't worth is because you lose the talent. So the thing is, in PvP, on the mask and on the knee pads, when you're running full glass cannon, there really isn't anything else to get there for the talents. Like, my main priority with this build is just to get as much damage as possible. And on the mask, like, there's not really any damage talent I could get, like, hard hittings for PvE. Obviously, there's like skill haste, which is for cooldowns. There's centered or like dialed in or something. Like, there's nothing I can really get there for damage, so it doesn't matter there. And the same thing with the knee pads. There's nothing I can really get. It's all like skill power oriented or just kind of random. Maybe I could use cloaked, which isn't bad in PvP, but like I said, I wanted to get a huge amount of damage. Now for the other brand sets, two-piece Heraldi makes sense. I'm getting accuracy and I'm getting headshot damage. There isn't really anything else I could use for pure damage. I could go for like Wyvern for a little bit of crit damage here, but I decided against that because I don't think it's super worth, and I wanted to... One of the things I try to do with this build is get as many offensive mod slots as possible, and just to juice as much weapon damage out of it as I can. So you might think, like, why the fuck are you running Alps gloves, right? Well, the reason for this is because they actually have an offensive protocol mod slot that I was able to get weapon damage and headshot damage in here. And the only other thing that I would do with this is maybe instead of running Alps gloves, I'd run Heraldi gloves, and then I'd swap the holster to Wyvern. But I'd rather have the weapon damage and the headshot damage than having 7% crit damage, if that makes sense. Then obviously I'm running Fenris for the 10% AR damage here. But Heraldi I think is great too. A lot of people say they don't like the accuracy of the P416, but when you're running Heraldi, it's 10% accuracy, and the headshot damage is great as well. Now let's talk about guns, and then I can go over every individual role and how I think you would want to set it up, and then maybe some different brand set synergies that you can do, or setups I suppose that you could do. So going over the gun, this is actually not the one that I use. I just want to show you guys how high the base damage is when I'm at 500 gear score, and this is without survivalist. If I was at survivalist, it would be even higher. I think well over 23k, maybe even 24k. Can't be asked to do the math right now, but or yeah, it would be over 24k. But anyway, if I was running survivalist, I'd have way more base damage here. But the reason that I'm showing this is I just want you guys to see how big this number actually is with this build. But I've been using this in PvP because obviously I can't get Optimist. Optimist is a really good talent for sure, but I can't get it because I have a whole bunch of red attributes to just try to get as much damage as I possibly can. So I've been using this 450, and you might be like, oh, what the fuck, you're nerfing your damage? Well, look at when I toggle my normalized stats, boom, these have the same exact amount of damage. The tooltip is just bugged out and says that this one has more RPM. I don't really know what that's about, but I've been using this just because I didn't want to mess with my PvE version, so I decided that I would just use my 450 one, and that works perfectly fine in PvP because the base damage is the same. Obviously, that's not the case if you go into the Occupied Dark Zone, but when you're playing in Normalized, it doesn't matter at all. So for the gun, I'm using a P416, reason being, highest damage potential output out of any of the ARs. You might be like, oh, why wouldn't you use a FAMAS? It has really high RPM, and it bursts down people really quick. The problem is that a lot of people run like deflector drones, or they have like the SMG build, and 30 bullets just wasn't enough for me. Maybe you could run extra on here, but I mean, you just get more damage out of using a P416 with Allegro at that point, and like you can't get an extended mag on the FAMAS. So a lot of the time I was running into the problem where I'd have to reload mid-combat without killing somebody, and there's also really bad like netcode and server problems in this game. And when you run guns with higher RPM, the more of your bullets will literally just not register within the game because it's just too much for the server to handle, which could even be more of a reason to maybe run something like an AK for lower RPM, just to make sure that you get that kill within that magazine. I think the P416 is going to be your most consistent though, but if you want to use the FAMAS or the AK, no problem there. For the second talent, you 100% want to go for Allegro. Allegro just nets more damage. I guess Jazz Hands isn't too bad, but I mean, it's only 10%. That's only going to make this go down to like, you know, not even 1.6. So I wouldn't really worry too much about getting like Jazz Hands. I think Allegro and Extra is probably your best bet in PvP. In terms of the top talent here, I have Breadbasket just because a lot of the time you will just end up hitting body shots anyways. I actually, to be perfectly honest, completely forgot that this talent gets nerfed in PvP. With this being said, it's probably actually not even worth it to run. Maybe it's decent, but I think I would rather just run Ranger. Even though Ranger isn't going to be up all of the time, it's still nice for those long distance fights, and in certain situations it will help you out. It's not a huge amount of extra damage, but it is what it is. Let me turn off Normalized. In terms of the mods that I was running on here, I have crit damage, sorry, on the red dot sight. It's not a lot of extra damage, I know, it's kind of negligible. I just happen to have crit chance with this build just to try to get as much damage as I can, but if you want, you can go accuracy here. It's really not going to make much of a difference at all. The crit damage is pretty negligible. You could go reload speed if you want to play survivalist, I guess, but yeah, doesn't really matter there. For the muzzle, I have accuracy. There really isn't anything else to go for here. I guess stability if you're running like an AK or something. For the grip, I have crit chance. You could go crit damage, you could go reload speed, you could go accuracy, really up to you. I think these numbers are really low. I just have a little bit of crit with this build, so I was like, might as well just stack as much as I can, I guess. And then of course, you want to go for the extra rounds here. If you don't have the extra rounds, you're going to be reloading a lot in combat without actually finishing a kill on somebody, and you never want to get into that situation. So yeah, that's it for the guns. For the holstered gun, I mean, Chatterbox, kind of obvious. If I kill one guy, 20% extra RPM, lets me just beam the next guy, so this is awesome. Going into individual roles, like I said, this build is meant to be glass cannon. I'm just trying to get as much damage as I possibly can. And the thing about True Patriot is that it's always going to roll one red here. And I really wanted to use True Patriot with this build because I wanted to try something different. So even though I typically advocate for not going for crit chance and crit damage at the moment, because the values are so low, it's really hard to get a lot of crit chance. Like even with this build, you can see only 38% crit chance and 30% crit damage. Getting crit chance is pretty easy. Getting high crit damage without sacrificing weapon damage and headshot damage is really hard. You could technically get crit damage, like get a big roll in your backpack and a big roll in your chest piece, But the second you do that, you're just losing out on potential weapon damage, and weapon damage is going to net you more damage overall, or same thing with headshot damage if you're hitting a lot of headshots. I guess it depends on the individual role, but most of the time weapon damage is just going to be more beneficial and of course more consistent. So that's why I typically try to go for like a really high weapon damage roll here. But I mean, like I said, I have to go for crit anyways, just because there's nothing else to get here. Like, there's no other red roll that I could get that's going to help me in a PvP scenario. For the blue, I just have 8,000 armor, or not armor, I wish it was armor, health, extra tankiness, not really much else I could get there. This crit chance roll could be higher, but I mean, only by 1%, so not a big deal. For the chest piece, unfortunately, mine isn't as good as I want it to be. I have 10% crit chance, 7% weapon damage, 5,000 health, berserk, and vital. I'm really happy about the weapon damage here. I might rather have a higher headshot damage roll instead of crit chance here. Not 100% about that, but I would probably rather do that. And then instead of health, I'd probably vouch for getting armor here. And then instead of vital, I would also go for hardened. The big thing here though is I needed a chest piece that had the offensive system mod slot so that I could get 6.5% AR damage here, which is just insane. Like, I only have 2 of these mods, so trying to get both of these in the build is a huge deal, because that's going to end up getting me 13% extra damage, right? Like, that's a lot of fucking damage. So I wanted to make sure to get that in the build, hence why I sacrificed not having hardened and extra armor here, and maybe headshot damage here. But I don't know that I really have another Fenris chest that I could do that with, but ideally that's what you would want. And you want Fenris on the chest because it gets you 2 talents. You could go for it on the holster, I suppose, as the second talent doesn't matter a whole bunch, and maybe go for like an Alps chest or something and get like really fat rolls on damage, but I don't know that that's worth it. You could go like ultra glass cannon by doing that route, but I guess having a little bit of armor is nice. Probably not going to make a huge difference, but if you want to do that, you definitely can. For the holster, I went for Araldi. I got crit chance, devastating, and then Araldi's great because I have an offensive mod slot here, which is awesome. Could also go for, not DNH, because DNH is going to have a utility mod slot, but you could go for Wyvern, which is also going to have an offensive mod slot. You could do this if you didn't have Araldi, or if you for some reason don't feel like getting the headshot damage on Araldi is worth, and you'd rather have the crit damage. Just depends on your crit chance, I guess. And then I have devastating. I think devastating is going to be more worth in PvP than precise would be, because a lot of the time you just straight up can't hit headshots on people, and devastating is more consistent. It's all around damage, while precise is only headshot damage, and it's much easier to hit headshots consistently in PvE versus in PvP. Sometimes precise in certain situations could be better, but I think for the majority of people, devastating will be better for you. For my backpack, this is by no means perfect, but I like it because I have a pretty decent weapon damage roll here. For the other roll, there's nothing I could get other than armor that is nice. Safeguard doesn't really matter. I can't really get any other talent here that I'd actually be able to activate. You know, on the ropes requires 7 and all that other stuff. So I actually went for hardened here. More armor, really nothing else that I could get here, so whatever. But I made sure to have an offensive system mod slot here. This is why my weapon damage here is kind of low. You could go for weapon damage and like crit damage or something like that, but it's kind of hard to get a good roll like that, and having the armor isn't too bad. But I really wanted to use a backpack with an offensive system because, like I said, 6.5% weapon damage is going to be huge and usually better than most other rolls that I would be capable of getting, you know. But, you know, I could have 8.5% weapon damage, and I could probably have something like this where I have like 8 weapon damage and then a little bit of crit damage. That'd probably be better for overall, you know, more damage, but it is what it is. For the gloves here, I went for Alps because Alps is the only one where you can get a high red attribute roll, a talent that is a circle talent, giving me devastating, and an offensive protocol. So just from this one piece, I'm getting 15% AR damage, plus 2.5% extra weapon damage, so 17.5% weapon damage, and a little bit of headshot damage just from this one piece. Cooldown reduction isn't really helping me out here at all, but there isn't really any other glove that I'd be able to do this with. You know, you could run a Raldi glove and then swap out the holster for Wyvern, or do something else like that if you wanted to. I don't think it's worth running Troop Rager though, because you lose a talent, and I mean, getting the talent and the mod slot is awesome. I don't think many people actually have considered doing this. If I had a better mod slot too, I could probably get one with like 3% weapon damage and like 2% AR damage, so I'm getting like 5% in total just from the mod, as opposed to what I have right now, because mine's a 450 mod. I don't think many people have thought about doing this, but it actually nets you more damage. So in a glass cannon, you know, setup, I think this is definitely beneficial. Then for the knee pads, of course, Can't get any other red roll here, so I just got crit chance. And then for my defensive mod, I have 2 generic mods that give me headshot damage. I know a lot of people are confused about this. This is actually going to count towards a blue attribute. That was a nice voice crack right there. But I got headshot damage there, and I don't have it in the chest piece. I guess I don't have it somewhere else. For some reason I thought that I did, but yeah, I tried to get as many offensive mod slots here actually, so it makes sense that I only have 1 headshot damage mod in. And then I just have crit chance. On True Patriot knee pads, they always roll red, and the red is always going to be crit chance, so I mean, kind of shit out of luck there. I guess if you wanted to go armor, it wouldn't be too bad, but you can't with True Patriot. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm sure you guys know the skill meta in PvP. You can use Chem Launcher, you can use Drone, you can use Shield. Whatever you want to do to be a cheesy motherfucker, you can do whatever you want. I think Chem Launcher and Defender Drone are just the most overpowered right now. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. But I'll show you guys my stats. The overall extra damage that I have is pretty nuts. The crit damage and stuff, not too helpful. Decent headshot damage, 100% headshot damage, no complaints there. But I got 28% all weapon damage bonus and 32% assault rifle damage. So in total, that's 60% extra damage, plus the 10% that I'm getting on armor damage, and the 30% that I'm getting from my gun, which is really helpful against people that use vector builds. So I have a little bit of extra damage when I'm melting people's armor off, and then when their armor is off, they just get obliterated because the health damage is so high, and I have so much damage stacking from everywhere else. But yeah, I hope this helped you guys. I know that a lot of you guys wanted to use an AR build. I tried to be as informative with this video as possible. Sorry this is a little bit longer, but hope you guys enjoy. If you did, please make sure to drop a like, subscribe for videos similar to this one, comment down below what other types of videos you would like to see, and follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/NickTube. Anyways, I'll see you guys later. Peace out.